Welcome everyone to the Innate Wellbeing podcast. Uh, you know, this morning we have a very special guest. It's afternoon time for me, but it's bright and early, 3:30 a.m. in the morning. We have Dave Denver here joining us, and he is a business breakthrough specialist. And I want to leave it to you to say what it is that you do. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Robert, and thanks for the invite to be your guest today. It's my pleasure. What is the business breakthrough specialist? I think there's no soundbite that I can give you that's going to cover that and package it all up and sound nice and pretty, and everyone goes, "Oh wow, now I totally understand it." I think it's the best way that I can explain it is to share with you some of the some of the background that I've gone through to get to where I am today. And every business owner that I sit with, any executive that I sit with, sometimes they may have the same goals, wants, desires, outcomes that they want to achieve, but the experiences that they've had to date and the position that they're in vary so much because it's a culmination of their life's work, their life events, the highs and lows and the challenges that they've had to deal with. So whilst the outcome might be the same in terms of wanting to have a profitable business, what that actually looks like to every individual is completely different. So often it's just taking them from their current state of chaos and mess and moving them to a position of flow and freedom and abundance, I suppose.
Nice, and I hear you. I hear you using these words of, flow and abundance, and these are typically words that might be, you know, woo woo. And I remember you saying specifically you had a really beautiful sort of breakthrough that I got to personally see. Me and Dave, we went through a training called Project Genesis and then Project Revolution together, and where we went through these set of principles called the three principles by a man named Sydney Banks. And at first when it's being discussed as consciousness and all these things, and it seems sort of like an abstract concept. So I'd love to hear your experience of, I guess, what's evolved in your business since the introduction of the principles and this concept of an innate well-being, like being able to tap into this sense of well-being from within yourself, and how this ultimately affects business success as well, because you help people with businesses. So how does this all sort of relate together?
Sure. The three principles was um, an interesting training course for me because it was the harder I tried to understand it, the more it felt like I was pushing it away and it's not until you can sit into a state of I think acceptance is the right word, just for the want of a better way of putting it, just to go, you know what, let's just assume what they're trying to tell us is it exists, it's right, it's let's say worldly facts. And then once you accept that and just and embellish that, then it's an inward outlook rather than an outward in, trying to make something out. It's external internal when you understand that it comes from the internal, and our thoughts, our consciousness, our mind, our thinking is all one and the same. Yet there's slight nuances from one to the other. How did that change my business?
Yeah.
The I think I went into this course and a couple before that as well, where it was very much about personal transformation and shift and moving those big rocks that have been holding you holding you back. And in for some reason, I was adopting a process of that's how I had to be in business as well, is leading with that. And it was a bit of a breakthrough, I guess. I've spent 20 odd years in financial services prior to, I think the last nearly 5 years now in the coaching world. And I was working with clients and truly try to lead with the transformational work and the mindset shift and so forth. And then when I just looked at what my strengths were, which is really financial analysis, business management, we've spent 15, 20 years building up family businesses across financial planning, finance broking, consulting practices as well. And every single one of those started with the business framework, the business plan, the business model. Then it was a case of where are we at? Where do we not need to get to? And it was the little steps that, in between, and understanding all the different components that make that up. And then this is where the penny dropped for me, is when I'm working with a client, if there is resistance to working on what I see as the logical aspects of business, so the levers that we need to pull in order to get the outcomes, if there's resistance there, then that's the opportunity for me to work with them and explore from a transformational perspective, what's holding them back, what's their rock that's in the way here, why can't they see this particular solution, or that taking this action is going to achieve that outcome. And often it can just be that they're just set in their ways. They don't know any different. There's fear on the other side of change. There could be a mountain of reasons to do that. So yeah, that change point was really leading with my core, leading with what I know to be true, and then bring the transformational aspect in. Whereas a lot of coaches around, they're transformational first, and I was just I think I was struggling with that. It just didn't feel true to me. But now I've found where that fits in the whole operation of what I do.
Yeah,
I
that's
hope that
powerful.
answered your question.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's like, I love what you said specifically about having levers in which create specific outcomes, and there's no substitute for those levers. Like we could do all the personal transformation that we want, but if certain levers aren't being pulled, then that also there has to be a balance of both. It seems from what I'm hearing, it's like, okay, if they have resistance to pulling the lever, this can bring what they're looking for, but there's resistance to it for some reason. So let's explore this with the personal transformation. Whereas maybe they might be in a state where they're ready and they're like, all right, let's pull this lever, and all of a sudden, boom, this thing happens in their life. And
Yeah, look, there's a real difference between, let's say a business is looking to advertise. So there's some expenditure that needs to take place. Now, if that hasn't been budgeted for, then we're going to have some pretty frank conversations around budget, money allocation, and so forth. And if there's a way to rob Peter to pay Paul in order to invest in something that's going to give them a result, then that's a really what I call a numbers conversation. It's really, if we can show that 1 + 2 is going to equal 3, and we can take a step forward, fantastic. So they're sort of mathematical facts or equations in the process. But if it's a case of, I've never spent money on advertising before, I've got the money there, but I'm just not sure it's going to get me the return. There's a fear factor in there, and that's the unknown. That's the trying something different. This is new territory. I've never been here before, and that's where we're starting to look through things of, where's the resistance? Is it fear? Is it have they got some sort of story going on in their head about you just don't spend money in that particular area? Have they tried it before, had a bad experience, so therefore it doesn't work? So these are all the things that come through when you're looking at that transformational process. So yeah, I sort of have the conversations between what I call the numbers conversations. They're the facts and figures, and then what's the where have we got a blockage in our way of thinking, in the way that we're seeing the world, in order to move through that.
yeah, I love that. I love that so much. There's specific things when I'm working with my clients, I see that sometimes they're resistant to doing something specific. For instance, if they're coaching, then they're afraid to possibly reach out to somebody, or to maybe they have people that are interested and they want their help, but they're afraid to create a proposal of some sort. And then I'll get the question like, how do I do that? How do I create a client? And so, well, okay, you got to create a proposal. Like, it's pretty straightforward. There's a very specific action in which you can do, which can generate the result that you're looking for. And it's always a funny thing. It's like, okay, I'll take up my phone. Let me type in a few letters, or let me draw a model, or whatever way I'm creating this proposal, and let me press enter. Let me schedule a time to talk with them. I can. It's a very specific thing in which I can do. There's no gray area. It's just type these 10 letters on the screen, press the enter button, and wait for a response. Either they say yes or they say no.
Absolutely. It is. It doesn't have to be any harder than that. You're spot on. So,
Like, I need this big technique for me to be able to do this, but it's no, let me just choose to do this. I have the practical things that I can do. And then also, I really love that you touched upon maybe they could be telling a story of some sort that, or maybe, yeah, maybe something did happen in the past where they tried to do that, but then it didn't work out the way that they liked it to. And now they have maybe this assumption that every time you do this specific thing, it leads to this specific outcome. But if they do it again, for instance, for me, the first time I ever gave out a proposal, I got a no. The next time that I gave a proposal, I ended up getting like 6 or 7 yeses in a row. So I didn't, after the first one that I gave, I waited a year and a half before I gave the next one. And when I finally gave the next one, I gave a next one and a next one and a next one and a next one. And I got 5 or 6 yeses in a row, which is completely mind shattering because I thought, okay, everybody's going to want to say no. And then it ended up turning into something bigger.
yeah. So that starts with checking your attitude and your own story. What's the story that's going on in your own head before you even take that action? Imagine if you didn't let a year and a half lapse between proposal number one and proposal number two. You 18 months down the track, you could have been at even if you did one a week, you could have been at proposal 70 something. And if that was your win percentage, you've got to make some allowances between in that 18 months. Perhaps you had some personal growth, some new ways of looking at things. You got better at what you did. But one of the things is that consistency of doing things. Your percentage return typically increases because you get better at it as you go.
I love that. I love that. If you don't ever put yourself out there, you're not going to receive a yes. You're also telling yourself no pretty much before you even allow yourself to enter a situation where maybe you will receive a no, but also maybe you will receive a yes. It's a possibility.
Yeah, an interesting way to handle that, Robert. Is to not be attached to the outcome, whether it's a yes or a no. You just don't care. And if your whole purpose is to rock up and deliver value to a client, actually share with them unabated, if you like, so that you're there to deliver value, so that you're wanting the customer or the potential client to experience absolute brilliant value, then the yes tends to happen as a no-brainer. It's hey, I've been working with this guy for an hour now or 2 hours, or we've called up 3 times in the last month, and every single time I walk away with a massive amount of ideas or clarity in where my thinking was a little bit, stuck in a storm or a thought storm, as I call it. Sometimes that's the storm when they're telling themselves the same story over and over again. And if you can just help them work through that, then often that next step of working together in a formal arrangement is really a no-brainer, because they're going, if I'm getting this much value and the guy hasn't even charged me yet, what's it going to be like when I work with him as a client?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So don't be attached to the outcome. That's a first easy said. It takes practice to do it, but if you're delivering exceptional value, whether it's a yes or a no, it's if you're not invested in that need for it to be a yes, and you're more invested in, I'm here to deliver exceptional value and help this person on whatever their current challenge is, then you it's a bit of reverse psychology, but it works.
And it's a process of personal transformation for yourself as well. If you can walk into a situation, maybe the situation bothers you at first, maybe you are attached to the outcome at first, but you put yourself in that uncomfortable situation enough times, you're gonna adapt. You're gonna overcome certain things. You're going to be okay with receiving no at a certain point, and also the people that do say yes are gonna see the value in which you can give to those people. So I always tell people that I'm working with that are coaches. I tell them, don't be afraid to to have uncomfortable conversations. Don't be afraid to stumble and fall down and scrape your knee and get back up, slap a band-aid on and keep going. Just keep
Mm.
putting yourself in the discomfort, because that's the space in which you're going to grow, and you're going to expand your practice. And I think that applies also to other aspects of life too, not just necessarily coaching.
Look, I use sport analogies all the time. Let's take football, and it doesn't matter what 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 style of football you're playing, whether it's my background in rugby league or rugby union, whether it's American football, whether it's soccer, whether it's Australian rules football. The list goes on and on. But you don't have a career in that sport without getting a few scratches and bruises along the way. And business is much the same. Sometimes you've just got to do the hard work, and a no might bruise your ego now and then, but it's how you bounce back. It's that next play that you go for, and it's always about, use any football analogy you like. It's often about putting yourself in a position to be ready for the ball, or ready for the pass, or ready for the assist, whatever the case may be, in order to achieve the objective, which is to score a goal or a try or a touchdown, as it might be in the American football leagues. So.
Yeah, and when you score that touchdown, it feels damn amazing too.
Yeah, it does, and that's and it's not just the individual that gets to celebrate; it's the whole team, because they've all played their part in order for that to happen. So.
And that kind of, when you say that, it reminds me of just in the coaching world, someone who is a coach to have a coach themselves, and to have this different sort of these inputs. Like, I know you were doing the group coaching, that's where we met, through group coaching. It's having this container in which you can you have the people that you're helping outside of the container, but then you have the container where we go, and then also we're practicing within the container. We're getting coached by our coaches and this sort of thing. So I think that's a really beautiful thing that you said, where it's a team effort. Not always do you have to do everything on your own. It can be something that you can you're working with people. Even the people that you're helping with, they're part of the team. Everybody's part of the team.
So, look, I think virtually any occupation, any career, there's room to have a coach or a mentor to help and assist. And if you're a coach yourself and you don't have a coach, then what's that saying about your business? It's one of those, you're not even investing in the very thing that you do. And I've seen it time and time again, coaches who just think that, that's where they are is all they need. And often, I have two coaches, and they often help me see things that I can't see, or just to broaden my perspective on something. And it just, new ideas come when your perspective is enhanced.
And so, with that being said, too, you mentioned you have two coaches, and if someone comes from the outside and they look at you and they say, "Dave, you must be a really messed up guy if you have two coaches." I think
Oh,
it's some
absolutely,
form of
totally
therapy.
screwed up. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's there can be a bit of a perception that if you've got a coach, there must be something wrong, but it's not necessarily the case. It's understanding that now, even with 20-something years experience in business, there's still stuff about business that I don't know. So if I've got the Oracle, as I nicknamed my coach, if I've got the Oracle to go and tap into, for someone that's been in business in one shape or form for 40 plus years, he's a wealth of information that I can tap into when I'm looking at a potential challenge or a perspective. And I might only chat with him 4 times a year, but when I do, it's there's movement. There's generally speaking, I'm hitting this particular challenge, and the sorts of challenges that business owners might face. It could be how do I move my business from 100,000 turnover to 500,000 turnover, from 500,000 to $1 million turnover, or is it multi-millions in terms of their revenue? But that's only one key performance indicator. You could have $100,000 of turnover and $90,000 of profit, or you can have $1 million turnover with $90,000 of profit. I'll take the 100,000 and 90,000 profit every day of the week over the million, because the more your turnover and revenue, the more clients typically you're having, the greater there's more things that you need to take into consideration, and often from a business owner's perspective, the bigger the headache.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You made me laugh really hard with the Oracle. It's quite.
Yeah. Look, it's I don't know if I've ever called him that to his face, actually, but it's the nickname that goes on in my head.
I'm sure.
And then,
I'm sure you'd be flattered.
yeah, and then you've met Chris, who I work with in all my transformational stuff, and Chris has been amazing in helping me get out of my own way over the last few years with just little things that, and it's not so much about. Sometimes it's not giving me knowledge that I didn't have. It's about moving that rock that's in the way from me seeing what I know to be true.
Yeah, that's powerful. I feel I resonate with that deeply, because it's been the same. It's not that somebody else. I think that's another misconception. People think, okay, you're paying this guy. What does this guy know that you don't about life? Considering, it's life coaching, let's say. And I wouldn't say it's about somebody knowing something more than you know. It's just somebody pointing you towards the fact that you already know just as well as him, and it gives you a deeper insight into that, an internal sight of what's true. And that's when it becomes so profound, because it's not some book knowledge that you're getting. It's not something that I can read in a book or I can find elsewhere. I'm finding it from the depth of my being. Like, I know it to be true, and it's an internal knowing. I don't need to ask anybody, hey, is this true? It's not about, it's not subject to approval or disapproval. It's something that's innately true to myself. And that was the basis of this podcast, like the Innate Wellbeing podcast. How do we access a state of well-being without having to read books about it and do all these things? Like, yes, these things help. Having a coach helps, but ultimately the coach is pointing towards something internal. And I think that's the power of having a coach. I think the misconception is that, the coach is going to try to fix you, or there's something wrong with you, but it's that no, nothing is wrong with you. And that's just a misperception that you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, there's I guess an element of that. Here's an opportunity to laugh at myself when I was back on tools, so to speak, in the financial planning world. A decade ago now, it was, and I first came across this concept of life coaching. Me, the arrogant financial planner, and what the hell do you need a life coach for? Who needs coaching on their life? And that was coming from someone that work with clients and coach them specifically on their financial position, their abundance, and how to have a whether it was cash flow in the household or saving for their retirement, and everything in between. And I kind of thought, what's this life coaching thing? How does that fit into what someone really needs? And it was a bit of a journey for me to understand that, certainly did I need one. I had no idea that I did. I thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and there was nothing wrong with me. I was probably the most balanced financial planner you'll ever meet, mate. I had a chip on both shoulders. So, but now, there's a that whole arrogance of that profession is, it's like a lifetime ago for me now. It's just I'm so I'm a very different person to what I was 5 or 6 years ago in terms of my knowledge, my understanding, human behavior. It's a fascinating world. Absolutely. The more I learn about it, the more I realize how much there is to learn and how little I really know in the grand scheme of just the human psyche.
Yeah, and I love how you can talk about this. When you said you were balanced with two chips on your shoulders, now I feel like there was a big evolution. Now you're able to be very practical. Talk about the levers. You mentioned, you know, how like
Mm.
even within just business metrics, like a business who's creating $90,000 in turnover, this sort of thing. You have the very practical aspect of it, but you're also open to the more non-practical aspects of life. I guess you could say logical.
Yeah, like I love the numbers, you know, creating spreadsheets and putting it all together and working out calculations. You know, that stuff floats my boat. I'm a numbers guy, I always have been. But when I made the concerted effort to start this um, new pathway into I get business coaching was where I wanted to go. Um, but man, did I have some stuff to learn about how people get to where they are, you know. So, and sometimes you've just got to undo some of the mess. And sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth. Um, but it but it's if you're open to new ways of thinking, new ideas. And as I said, sometimes it's the numbers, it's the metrics, it's the very logical things that we need to do. And other times we've just got to explore, you know, what's really going on beneath the surface here. Where's the fear coming from? Where's the apprehension? Where's the resistance? Where's the reservation? Where's there a gap in knowledge and misunderstanding? And as a coach, you know, you said it earlier that you're always helping your client to point them in the direction of truth, their own truth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because sometimes it's for people, it's and myself included. I'm sure maybe you've experienced this too, where it's sometimes there's a lever you can pull, but it's just for some reason in your experience, it's not as easy as just pulling the lever. It's a very easy yes or no thing where you have a specific action in which you can take. For me, it was I mean it was kind of illogical. It was quitting my job and becoming a coach and this sort of thing. And for me, that seemed illogical because I only have 1 year of university. So I went to school and then I decided, okay, I'm going to travel. I went to the full hippie lifestyle. I went to Peru, did ayahuasca, a psychedelic in the Peruvian jungle. After that, I went to India, lived in India. I was walking barefoot for 3 months. I went the full 9 yards in the woo woo. And I'm thinking I'm here at this bank. This bank is a pretty good job. It's 2 seconds away from my home. I can move up a couple positions and make $100,000 a year, have some vacation time, and I'm happy. But I really desired to be a coach, and there was a very simple answer, which was just become a coach. But it took me 2 years to muster up the courage to do that because I had this belief that, okay, if I do this, maybe I'm going to be homeless one day. Maybe I'm going to have to worry about survival all the time, and I'm gonna have all these big problems. And the day after I quit my job to become a coach, I signed 2 clients the next day. So it's like you think one thing is gonna happen, and then the complete opposite could happen. Maybe that thing would have happened, but I was okay with exploring that. And I love that you said that because it's you know sometimes there's some stuff in the way. Sometimes there's maybe you have a belief of how things will be, or you just have a mix up somehow. There's some sort of undoing that you need to do, some sort of
Mm.
and one of our mutual coaches, Kai, he says it's subtractive psychology. Just you're not adding anything to yourself. Removing you're just removing the
The misunderstanding.
misunderstandings. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I've heard Kai say that many times. So it's great. Yeah, you're the human mind is a miraculous tool. It really is. We can talk ourselves into things and out of things um, far too easily sometimes on what we perceive to be all the information. Our current viewpoint is not necessarily the only perspective, and sometimes we've got to you know, walk around to the other side of the problem and have a look at it from there, or like jump in a helicopter and get 200 feet up above it and have a look down on the situation and go, right, what's going on here that I can't see from my ground position. And once you start to learn to shift your perspective, look at it from the left side, the right side, from behind it, underneath it, above it, And they're all metaphors, on every problem you can literally physically walk around the other side, but it's about going, if I'm doing a calculation a certain way, is there another way to do this calculation that's going to get that different outcome? And that's, in my world, working with businesses, a lot of it is can be, they've just done things a certain way for so long, they don't know any different. In fact, they don't even know a different way may exist because that's just how they've always done it. That's one of my, it's kind of like that. Right, when now it's that trigger for, we're in the moment now. When I get that feedback from a client that says, oh, that's just how we've always done it, then in my mind, I'm going, perfect. This is exactly the time to question that. It still might be the right thing to do, but if they've only done it that way for 10 years and they've never bothered to look anything else, how do they know that it's now best practice?
Yeah, it's like, how do I get through this brick wall? Keep walking into the brick wall.
And sometimes we don't need to change it. We just need to have a look at it to go, no, what you're doing is the most efficient way for that particular aspect. So let's keep doing that. But at least if we've taken the time to analyze it, we now know, rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it because that's how it's always been done. So it's questioning those procedures and processes. It could be as simple as, like, I'm working with a client and we're doing so they're a business to business client. That's probably the best way to put it. There's a lot of logistics and so forth, and just the way that their setups were for loading up customers and having the materials. From one end of a yard to the other end of the yard, there didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason as to how where certain things would be. So it was basically looking at when a client comes in and takes product A and B, they also get X and Z. Well, why don't we have them close together in the yard so that it's not a forklift driver's going from one end to the other end for pretty much the same, putting stuff on a truck and so forth. So it's about overhauling that and having a look at the logistics of it. And there's a lot of analysis that goes into that, because no two clients come in want exactly the same order every single time, but you've got to look on the balance of probabilities. How do we make our life easier? How do we get our load ups and trucks out of the yard quicker than that current format? And if a particular forklift driver has been there for 20 years and that product A has always been in that one location, sure, it's going to upset the apple cart because he's now got to go out of his comfort zone to make change. But when you bring the team together and you explain what we're trying to do is help some efficiency factors here so we can get our clients in the yard and out of the yard a heck of a lot quicker. And if you can get a truck to be even just 3 or 4 minutes less in the yard, let's say their average time in the yard's 15 minutes and we can get that down to 12 minutes, well, by the end of the day, that's another 4 trucks that have gone through the yard.
Right.
So it makes for a lot of processes and deliberate drivers that make your efficiencies better.
Yeah, I love that. Just a little shift in perspective, like just seeing it from a different angle, like you said, sideways, upside down, whatever direction you're looking at it from. It's maybe they are already doing the most efficient thing, and maybe there's nothing to change, but also you don't know that unless you willingly go into a position where you're, okay, wait, maybe there could be a more efficient way in which I'm doing this. Maybe I'm approaching it in a way that maybe I'm just hitting my head against the wall. I'm not doing it in a way that I can, if there's a brick wall in front of me, I'm just walking into the brick wall. Maybe I could just walk around it.
Definitely. Another thing I've noticed when you work with business owners that have, let's say they have a team or a staff of, it might be 10, 20 staff, so to speak. Often those staff know the answers to the problems that the business owner is facing, but because there's that perception of inability to communicate, or the boss says, no, it's my business, you'll do it my way, they're not open to those solutions that the staff might know. So working with businesses in that aspect, one of the important things to do is to actually go and interview the team and see what their take on certain challenges and so forth are. And if you can, if you're getting the same problem identified by multiple people and they're offering solutions as well, and the business, oh, no one's ever bothered to bring that to my attention. Well, were you open to that? Oh, probably not. well, there's the problem, So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's powerful. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. I think back to my days of working in, working in like a job. Like I was working at a bank and just different places, and it's true when you're working as an employee, when you're working maybe not in a management position, you see a lot of things that maybe the manager might not see because they're taking over different processes, and maybe it could there's the possibility that it could be overlooked, and that's a really beautiful point, especially if you're helping as a business specialist, let's say, to help them to transform the business. Then getting the perspective of the people on the ground as well helps, not just speaking to the managerial like
Mm.
positions, and integrating the two. I really like that.
I'll give you an example that I've used in say like banking and similar professions. If you're in that world, banking, finance, accounting, bookkeeping, a lot of your work is data entry, and on your keyboard you're often using just the right hand side, the little number keypad, as opposed to the letters. So a challenge that I'll give them, and if I'll sit at their computer and I'll immediately put the mouse to the left hand side. So you use your mouse in your left hand and then your number keypad in your right hand. Now you set it up like that and say, right, now it's your turn, and they'll immediately put the mouse back to the right hand side because that's the way they've always done it. But if you actually look at a computer's designed for you to use your mouth in your left hand and your right hand on your data entry point, and it's a lot more quicker and flow. But it takes you going out of your comfort zone to try something enough time. Of course, the first time you use a mouse in your left hand, it feels weird and clunky and uncomfortable and uncoordinated. But if you used to stick at it for 1 or 2 days, you'll be flying along in no uncertain terms. So that's a really good way just to test. Even someone that just sits at a desk, how can we help your efficiency around a keyboard? Now, what's the difference that's going to make over the course of a day? Who knows? We're probably talking seconds. but if you're in a constant data entry point, you've got to take your hand off the mouse, back onto the keyboard, hand off there. Why not save yourself the pain and be able to do it two-handed? We type two-handed. Why don't we do those sorts of things? So these are just little things where you can just play games just to test the resistance barrier to whether they're willing to try something new.
And as someone who worked in a bank, I was working, frontline. I was working as a customer service representative,
Yep.
and you're working with customers all day. And as you're working with the customers, I remember specifically, as you said this, it reminds me, it's, yeah, you are using your right hand entirely for a lot of the processes. And I remember too, I would be training some people when they would be new, and their instinct was to, use the mouse and go to the screen and click something, which there's short forms or hotkeys that you could press on the keyboard.
Yep.
And I would always teach them right away. I said, no, come back, come back. And the initial response, like you said, was to go and click with the mouse. And it's, no, come back, come back, come back. And the more they would come back, it would be slow at the beginning. The customers, it'd probably be slower for the customers as well. But after a period of time, when you learn that way, you're saving minutes within the transaction, and people are much happier because you're working quicker, and it was just overall more effective. And I see how even just the mouse analogy, like you said, even using that probably would have saved so much more time, because I could see how I could remember even switching between the keyboard like this and switching between the mouse and this sort of thing. So it's, I think, and the little aspects add up. Like the very little details can add up into a huge thing.
Well, it's the physiology as well. You've now got both arms doing some work through the day rather than just all one arm. So you don't get to the end of the day going, God, my right arm really aches, because you've actually balanced your workload through your body. So proving your physiology and stuff like that as well. When I was, oh man, we're going back 30 years now. When I was still at uni, I worked as a croupier in the casino. And when you deal roulette, roulettes can be a left-handed layout or a right-handed layout, and you've got to learn to do both. And it was interesting to watch people in the training course that didn't have that dexterity in their left hand, because if they're left-handed, in their right hand, because they could only, they're so used to all their life only doing things one way. From a young age, I pretty much did both things with most hands. I write right-handed, but pretty much everything else I can do, both ways. If I write left-handed, you still can't read it either because I write like a doctor. But either way, So, but it was one of those things like if you go into a casino and you look at a roulette table, you'll notice that there's a left-handed wheel and a right-handed wheel, and you have to be able to be just as equally good in both hands. Now, if you then progress as a dealer and you work onto a craps table, you have to be extremely proficient in both hands, be able to deal on the left side of the table, the right hand side of the table, just as good without a blink of an eye. And that's where those sorts of things come. And like as you're saying, in their little steps, it feels clunky at first, but as you get better at it, you wake up one day and you're going, man, this is easy.
Yeah, and I think that even relates back to the whole inside out sort of understanding as well. I found that at first when I was hearing all these things, maybe I would tap into this, this state of inside out for a moment and it would feel amazing, but then I would be trying to make it happen. Like you said, there would be a forceful trying to make it happen opposed to maybe that uncomfortable adjustment period that just naturally takes place, and just letting it happen naturally, like not just allowing it to happen. And over time it just, you naturally sort of just keep going in and out of it, and then you start to stay in longer and longer and longer, and it becomes a more constant experience for you. And um, you start to wonder, like, how was I thinking the other way? Like, how was I thinking outside in, blaming outside things for what's happening inside of me? And maybe, misunderstandings still happen, but the recovery time for you to come back to an inside out understanding, seeing that, wait a second, I'm creating this from inside. Whatever I'm experiencing is happening inside. And it can't be the outside situations that are causing me to feel the way that I'm feeling or think the way that I'm thinking. Then you come back, you snap back, and wait a second, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. The situation isn't causing the thing that is happening inside of me. It's, I am choosing the thing that's inside of me, and the situation is happening the way it's happening. And I'm deciding to make them look like they're the same thing. They're happening in tandem with each other, but rather they're two completely mutually exclusive things. And I get to choose how it is that I feel inside.
Absolutely. The the average person on the street has no idea that feelings are a choice. Often we have an event that may trigger us, then we get caught up in our thoughts about how we felt unjust or whatever the case may be. It might have been a positive experience as well. Then as a result of that, we then choose anger, frustration, delight, happiness, sadness, pissed off, whatever the case may be. But that's actually a choice, but it happens so quick we don't see where the choice part happens. But when you start to understand that, and this is getting into the three principles, that once you understand that 100% of the time the experience that you're having is just 100% your own thoughts taking form in the moment. So essentially everything in life is made up. So why not make up a story that serves us rather than holds us stuck?
It becomes comical at a certain point because
it does, and that was what I guess that was my resistance to the whole three principles process. Like, this is just too easy. Like, it's where's the catch in all this, and then the more I think I was typical human nature, I was trying to overcomplicate the process. And then when you just sit back and just be with it, it is it's beautifully simple, but we get in our own way and we complicate it. And I catch myself out now and then. I'll be angry because I wake up in the morning, there's a sink full of dishes because the kids haven't put I'm the first one in bed because I'm the first one up. It's just the nature of my body clock and what I've got teenage kids that I go to bed before they do. It's hilarious. But there might be that they didn't put the dishwasher on in the morning, or the sink's still full of dishes, and so there can be a trigger where you go, bloody kids. But the opportunity for me to in that moment go, okay, something came up, they didn't get to it yet. I'll just write them a nice little message that before you go off for work for the day, or you go off to school for the day, best you finish the chores that you didn't do last night. And so I don't need to be triggered. I just need to hold them accountable to that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they probably respond to that better. I know most human beings, they respond better to just accountability opposed to, it's almost like blaming what's happening inside of you on someone else, saying like, okay, the reason why I'm angry is because you didn't do the dishes, but rather it's, I decided to be angry, the dishes are not done, I decided to be angry.
Mm.
Or I can choose to still feel a sense of peace with myself, still feel okay with it, maybe have a good chuckle about it, and just tell them, hey, could you please put those dishes away?
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yep. And yeah, last night you told me that you'd do it, so fantastic. You didn't do it, so it's now an outstanding chore. Can we get on top of it? Excuse me. So just work with them, and working with, you know, your own kids, your partners. I mean, how, relationships. I guess invariably, when I work with business owners, at some point there is a conversation around tension at home. And typically, a business owner, whether it's male or female, they can be so tunnel vision sometimes just working on their business that they start to neglect the other things in their life that are important to them as well, because they see that as, if I don't fix this, then our source of income dries up and then all those other things don't matter. But in the meantime, you're neglecting your spouse, you're neglecting your kids, you're not doing the work around the house that needs to be done. There's all those things that come into play, and then resentment builds up from the other parties. So sometimes we've just got to, okay, it's that perspective, right? Let's jump in the helicopter. Let's get 200, 300, 500 feet up. Have a good look at what's going on down below, and going, okay, what's going on there that I'm missing from my perspective on the ground? Oh, I'm neglecting that, right? Best we put some effort in that area.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And sometimes it's, I find personally when I'm trying so hard in a certain direction, I almost, like you said, you can't grasp it.
Hmm.
Like if I'm trying so hard to create business success, or I'm trying so hard to create prosperous relationships and this sort of thing, sometimes that's the repellent force that is pushing away or keeping those things from entering in a deeper way into my life. So it's oftentimes I'm the factor because I'm trying so hard to grasp at something. It's it's disappearing at that point. It's just gone at that point. And then I
Hmm.
stop and it just comes full force. It just
Totally
like
agree. Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah. It's often, you might have seen a movie where uh, there's plenty of sporting movies over the years. Let's use one of those where um, there's a massive play that needs to take place, but from the cinematography perspective, they slow it down. So it looks like the athlete has all the time in the world to make those decisions. And it could be, let's go back to the American football, it could be a quarterback that, once he's got the ball, he's surveying where his receivers are, who's got space, who hasn't. He knows he can thread the needle with the ball, but he's just looking for that one moment where he's going to pull the trigger and just release that ball and it goes. But in the meantime, it's kind of like slow motion. He's seeing everything just unfold around him to the point where he's, and these are all algorithms going on his head, no, that option's closed, this option's open. Okay, that one's open as well. He's slightly longer. That's the better opportunity. Bang, fires. So that, and there, he's so good with his game that he can do that in almost slow motion context to do that. And that's, whether that's in, as you're saying, that process of when we try too hard, we're forcing the process, and when we just relax with it, um, those analytics tend to take place, and we become in flow with it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, in flow, there's a certain rhythm. If you're tapped into the rhythm, it's
Yep.
inevitably all these beautiful things happen. That's what I really found with coming to the principles. When I learned the principles, there was just this inner knowing that took place of how to sync myself to the rhythm, or how to get in flow. And naturally, I think things shifted inside first. I started to feel a beautiful feeling and started to see more deeply how life really works inside. And then outside, then the success came. It's like, okay, cool. Like coaching starts to become prosperous. My relationship, my girlfriend shows up out of nowhere. Um, my relationships with my friends and my family starts to get better. And it's like, okay, interesting. All these things are changing just from that one internal thing that happened, which was just to get into the flow of things, to allow myself to kind of just relax into the way that things actually are. And it's fascinating to see how it could be sort of a low effort thing. You don't really need to put this hard work, hard effort. Like there's specific things, yeah, so I have to pull the levers for certain things, for certain action, for certain results that I want. But in terms of experiencing what I want inside, it's just a choice. I can choose to allow myself to be in the flow. I don't have to um, I thought that I had to get rid of my bed and I had to sleep on the floor and I had to do certain things that I deemed as spiritual for me to have a sense of well-being inside. And then I realized that, wait a second, it's innate well-being, it's inside. So that means that there's no
Mm.
way that I would have to do something outside for me to feel good inside. I don't have to control the people around me to do what I want so that I can feel good, or control the things that are happening, or create more clients, or do XYZ. I can feel good inside of myself and do those things because I want to.
I love it. It's that statement that you'll hear people say time and time again. I'll be happy when, and that when is an external event or circumstance outside of them, when the happiness is already available to them, so they can choose to be happy. And I'm also working towards achieving X, Y, and Z. And then that is a far better place to come from, like we touched on earlier, where you're not attached to the result. I don't need that to happen in order for my happiness to be present. I can have happiness present and I can still work to that. I'm not attached to that result. It may work, it may not. If it doesn't, okay, I've got to go back to the drawing board, recalibrate and go at it again. If it does happen, fantastic. I now recalibrate and set the next goal. So either way, I'm still happy.
And if I get triggered in the process, amazing. That's just an indication of where I'm at.
Well, you have clients that have a fear of failure, and one of the methodologies that I've adopted is failure actually doesn't exist, because either we win or we learn. And if we win, if we achieve the outcome that we desired, then that's a win. And if we didn't achieve the outcome, then that's a learning opportunity. And a learning opportunity is still a win, because now we've advanced and moved and progressed where we otherwise didn't. So either way, you're still winning. And that's, so rather than look at it as a failure and it's destitute, the world's going to come to an end, now I've got to cut my arm off, whatever the case may be. It's just a case of, no, we didn't achieve the goal. Right. What did we learn from that experience? Well, A, B, and C worked. E, F, and G needs a little bit of work. Let's go back, reappraise that, recalibrate. What have we got to do different? Now off we go.
I love that. It's not a personal thing. It doesn't mean anything about you. There's no big dire consequence that'll happen if you're not
Yeah.
successful. It's just you're like you said, it's a learning opportunity. So still you're successful. Still it's a win. There's no
Yeah.
I think that's
We win all we learn. It's simple.
and maybe that's it seems like you've taken us in a helicopter right now. We're flying above the ground and we're just seeing this perspective of, it's not necessarily that there's not this like this dire thing or this it's not that there's this huge consequence or even there's no such thing as loss or failure in this sense. When you're really seeing it in this way, there's no sense of loss or failure. It's not that I'm a shitty coach or I'm this or that. No, I'm learning. So if I walk into a situation which doesn't unfold perfectly the way that I want it, that's an opportunity for me to refine and to step closer into what it is that I really want.
Mm,
So it's just everything that's happening. I love that everything that comes towards you is an opportunity for you to step closer. It's not obstacles, they're opportunities for you to, it's part of the journey.
absolutely. And if you can then take that to the next level, Robert, everything that's going on around you is actually starting from inside you. Because you're projecting it, and you're taking certain things on. There's a lot of things that go on around you that you ignore. Like, if I use the example at the moment of, you're sitting in a seat. Now, it's not until I've said, what's the pressure on the back of your legs when you're actually sitting on that seat? Before that, you had no consciousness around that. Okay. What's the temperature of the room? no consciousness around it until we bring it to your attention, because your brain is constantly deleting or generalizing all these sets of circumstances going on around you that it doesn't need to be taking into consideration or having a conscious thought about it for it to be relevant for the situation. Whereas at the moment, you and I are talking and engaging in conversation. It's more about what is the conversation? What's going on here? How can we both be present for each other in that conversation? That's more important than what's the comfort of my chair at the moment. So these are the conscious things that we can, sometimes you've just got to look at what's all the noise going on and then go, all right, what are the real things here that I need to work with, and just ignore the rest of the noise for the moment so we can go forward.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That brought me right back to that sense of the principles. When we're exploring the principles, there's always this understanding that comes to place, which is, wait a second, I'm creating this. This is happening within me, and it's not necessarily just about saying the words, but a truly embodied understanding of seeing that, wait a second, this is happening inside. And there's always such a beautiful feeling that accompanies that, because it just naturally comes. Like the moment that I tap into that, I see that there's always this very beautiful feeling that comes to my awareness. Just like you said, if I didn't notice the pressure on my legs when you brought it up, then it's like immediately I'm like, wait a second, wow, my legs are hurting.
Mm. Yeah, and it's like that all the time. So does the world go on and then we participate in the world, or is it happening in our head first, and then as we move through time and space, we're projecting the different things that are going on? But perhaps it's a combination of both. I don't know. Is there a right or a wrong? But the whole thought process, our perception of what's going on, starts inside us, not external of us.
I love that, and that's a beautiful sort of piece that you've left us with, which is that it's internal. It's happening internally, and I love that. That's the basis of this whole podcast, Innate Wellbeing. So it's thank you so much um, for the wisdom that you've given. It's really beautiful to hear everything that you brought to the table in terms of like your own personal journey with being a business specialist, and transitioning from financial planning to going through this whole process of personal transformation for yourself, and I guess sort of the things that you've learned, and in the meantime, in the process of that, and also practical advice and stories that you've had with clients and real life situations and this sort of thing. So it's been a super pleasure to have you, and I'm also curious if there's anything that you would like to like leave the guests with, if there's any sort of advice that you can give the guests, and also a way that the guests can reach you.
Um, easy to reach me. You can have a look at Accelerate Your Business Profits with an S on the end.com. So accelerateyourbusinessprofits.com. There's a book there. Feel free to download the book and work your way through if you're a business owner. It's the best. It's my way of sharing that. I was going to charge for the book, but I think it's just these days. I think that sort of information needs to be in the hands of many business owners. So it's a way of actually getting that out there into the universe and sharing some of the knowledge that I've learned along the way. The parting gift. I'll repeat what I said before. That 100% of the time, the experience that I am having is 100% just my thoughts taking form in the moment. When I first heard that myself, it didn't land, but every day, it's a quote that I read every single day, and I have a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation of it as each day goes by.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's been something that's been profound for me, and even just this conversation alone is connecting me even back into that space again. So um, I love that. And for all the viewers, I'll link Dave's information into the description and the bio, and give his website a visit. He's been very profound in my journey. We've had sessions together and this sort of thing, and it's been really beautiful. He's helped me to actually create rather not create, but he helped push me into creating one of my programs that I was hesitant. You know, there was a lever that I knew that I had to push, not had to push, but I wanted to push, and he got me over that little fear of what will happen, what's gonna happen if I put myself out there. Are people gonna judge me? And you know, I had all these fears surrounding that.
It was like a lemming on the edge of a cliff face. You just needed a push.
Yeah.
That's all good. You've done miraculous work. I think we've known each other for close on 2 years now, Robert, and I've seen massive change and transformation in you in that time. It's been a beautiful journey to watch and observe and to be a part of.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that, and thank you so much for coming out today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And I just want to say, everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Take care.